This is Eagle Freedom Presents Showtime.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Here's your host, Deston Rogers.
And welcome once again. My name is Deston Rogers. I am the host of Eagle Freedom Presents. Glad to have you with us today. By the way, we want to thank Mad Guz and the Mojos for letting us use their music on today's episode of Eagle Freedom Presents. And I'll tell you what, here, our mantra is rise, inspire, and overcome. And today, my guest is a testament to just that. For so many years and so many entrepreneurs, the dream of freedom quickly turns into a nightmare. And they don't own a business, they own a job. And a job, basically, well, that traps them, working more hours for less pay and more stress than they ever imagined. Our guest today has made it his life's work to shatter those shackles. I recently had the opportunity to meet him in person, hear him speak at the Los Angeles Tribune's Books, Entertainment, and Leadership event, which was held at the Barnes & Noble at the Grove in Los Angeles. And his insights on the stage were incredibly sharp. His name is Aaron Young, a lifelong entrepreneur and creator of the Unshackled Owner, a program dedicated to helping entrepreneurs build a business that serves them, not the other way around. As the chairman and CEO of Laughlin and Associates, a company that for 44 years has helped over 100,000 entrepreneurs start and grow, Aaron has had an eagle eye view of what works and what doesn't. He's seen the common mistake that leads to failure and the critical strategies that build lasting success. But Aaron's fight for freedom isn't just a business metaphor. He found himself literally in the fight of his life, staring down over a decade in prison, indicted for something he didn't even understand. After accumulating nearly $2 million in legal fees, he faced a baffling system where even the judge was confused by his prosecution. He's an author, an advisor, a builder of multi-million-dollar companies, and a survivor of a legal battle that would have crushed most people. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Aaron Young. Aaron, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for the introduction. I do need to make a little caveat. I must need to update whatever's online about me because the company's 54 years old now, but I loved everything you said. Thank you so much. And looks like we might go down some interesting paths today based on the introduction. So I'm looking forward to that.
Well, 54 years. Well, that's that's an incredible testament to time. That's for sure. Well, what I like to do, Aaron, is I like to, before we dive into everything, really the meat and potato and stuff, I really like for my audience to understand who it is that we are talking to. So can you kind of give us a little bit of a background, maybe of, how you were raised, your upbringing, and your family lifestyle as you were growing up?
Yeah. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. I'm 61 years old. I was born in 1964 to Dick and Carol Young, who were great parents, loved me, told me I could accomplish anything. My wife told me years ago when I was complaining about people, come on, you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I've done it. I didn't have any big advantages. And she goes, you need to just shut your mouth, buddy, because you're the luckiest guy in the world. I said, what do you mean? She said, you're a white man in the United States of America whose parents stayed married and loved him and who got to do all kinds of great things as a kid. You had the most likely springboard for your life, and you need to understand how unique that is. So I don't ever want to take too much credit for how amazing I am, but I grew up, and mom and dad were great, but they didn't have any money. They were always struggling. They were always, the whole time, as a matter of fact, their whole life, they were kind of behind the 8 ball financially. They were never good with money. So as a teenager, I had to figure out how to make money, or as the oldest of 5, I wasn't going to have those new Nikes or Nikes as we call them, because they were new. If I was going to have anything besides Kmart jeans, I had to earn some money. So I had to quickly figure out how to make some money, which I learned some great lessons as a teenager, which I can go into any of these stories, but I learned some great things there. And I was able to kind of leverage them up even to this day. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's almost cliche. I grew up in the Mormon church. I was a Mormon missionary. I was one of those guys out there on the 10 speed in my white shirt and tie, knocking on doors back in the day. I was an Eagle Scout. I've had a very, uh, I've had a very beautiful life, even though staying at a Motel 6 when I was a kid was like a great treat. You know, if we weren't sleeping on some cousin's floor for the whole vacation, you know, that was good. Excuse me. So I didn't come from much money, but I came from a lot of love and a lot of encouragement, and had a lot of good mentors around me as a kid. And I feel very grateful for that.
Well, and you said something very interesting is you didn't grow up with a lot of money, but it's actually what you learned growing up, which was more valuable than the having the money at that time, correct?
Oh, no question. Because if it had been easy, you know, if there'd been plenty, if we were going skiing all the time, like some of my friends were, if we were getting on airplanes as a family and flying to some exotic location, like some of my friends were, and I could get the clothes and the shoes and the car and all that stuff. You know how I got my first car? I won the car selling tickets to a school program.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, there was a competition. We had a auto shop at our school, and there was every year somebody donated some car, and the auto shop fixed it up. And then whoever sold the most tickets to what we called the Benson, we didn't call it, the school called it the Benson Tech Show. Whoever sold the most tickets won the car, and that was me. And I, I had to do something different than what other people around me were thinking as the traditional thing to do as a teenager or as a young adult, because the circumstances were not good for me to go to college or to go, do any of that. I had to figure out what to do to make money. And I'm so grateful I did, because I've been able to now live a very interesting life, because I haven't been hung up on doing things the way you're supposed to do them. I've figured out ways to do things that have created a lot of good business partnerships, a lot of good relationships, and a lot of abundance.
Well, and it's interesting that you say, you had to think basically what you did, you had to think outside the box,
Yeah.
something differently than everybody else was thinking when you were selling the tickets. Is that kind of where, because you started your first company, a recycling business, when you were 18 years old. At what point did you start going, was that where you started learning, I'm going to do things differently than everybody else?
Well, a couple of quick examples, and I'll go super fast because this is probably not overly interesting for your audience, but I will tell you this. Selling the tickets, let me give you an example there. So most people would say, okay, I'm going to get a stack of tickets from the school store. We could go and they would give us, like, I think you could get 10 tickets or something, and they were 75 cents a piece, right? We didn't have to pay them. We would get them, we could sell them and bring the money back, and that would count toward this competition. So most people go, hey, mom and dad, can I sell you both a ticket? Grandma, grandpa, next door neighbor, Aunt Joan, Uncle Ron, can you buy a ticket? And they'll sell, a few tickets. What I did was I got permission to get stacks of 100 tickets, and I called the power company, the natural gas company, banks, stock brokerages, law firms, and asked them to buy, for a tax-deductible donation, to buy 100 ticket block or more. And then I said, and I'll deliver those tickets to you for your team, or I've got a relationship with the Boys and Girls Club, and I'll give this to the Boys and Girls Club so that those kids can come to see the Benson Tech Show. And so I sold thousands of tickets while everybody else sold a dozen. I mean, I demolished anybody. I'm not saying to pump me up. I just thought, how can I do this at scale? I want that car. So I need to sell more tickets than anybody else could think of. I was asked to put on a youth program for church for our little group of 8 congregations. I looked at that and I thought, well, that'll be good, but I see these kids all the time. I don't want to hang out with, these are the same kids I see at every event. So I want to go out and I thought, well, I'll do the region, which is about 30 congregations. And then once we started getting a little bit of traction on that, I thought, why don't we do multi-region? We'll move it to a hotel ballroom. We'll fly speakers in. I'm a junior in high school. I put on an event that had about 1,500 kids that all paid. We had to find places for them all to sleep in the Portland area because they were coming in from out of town. I had to negotiate to get speakers to come in. I had to with adults, but I was the one in charge. I was the chairman, and I didn't know that I couldn't do it, so I just did it.
And did you, when you were coming up with these ideas, which were brilliant, by the way?
It was all about meeting girls, Destin. It was just about how can I make this into the coolest, youth party that I can meet a million cool people, especially cute girls from all over the place that I don't know yet. I mean, I'm not trying to be weird, but when you're 17, 16, that's what you're thinking about. It's all social. There's no money in it. This was like, how can I do it? When I started the business, I didn't know that it was hard. I saw there was a way to make money. We figured out a way to do it. I got it going. Then I left to go be a Mormon missionary. And while I was gone for those 2 years, I got paid every day, right? Nobody told me that was weird. All my employees got paid. The 4 other guys all got paid every day. The bills got paid. The trucks got paid for. The trucks got serviced. Everything was good. And I got money in my account every day because, well, it was mine. And I had nothing to do with doing the work, but I got paid because I owned it. And I did the same thing with my next company and so on and so on and so on.
And so like we talked about, you got into the recycling business at 18. You sold that business. You went into the cellular phone business
at 22.
It is just amazing how much you did just in the early years, from, high school years to your early 20s. At what point did you start looking outside of what you were doing there and wanting maybe to broaden your scope and see what else was out there? Did you have any clue that you really wanted to go to work for another company? This is just the way you thought how things were gone.
How do I say this? Because I went to 1 year of junior college where I got into the show choir and I just sang for 9 months and didn't really get grades, right? And then it was at the Christmas of that first year of my only year of college that I found the idea. I realized I could make money with this, picking up old newspapers. So then second semester created the route books, the maps, the flyers, got everything ready. Came back in April, right as I was turning 19, and started canvassing the city of Portland and ended up with about 5,000 homes that we picked up from monthly. And it wasn't that there was no business school thinking in it. It was like, oh, I wonder how many houses have old newspapers in the garage, right? Mm-hmm. I wonder how many of these people would let us pick them up. Let's go out and do that. And then once we built the routes out and we got efficient, we went from 5 days to 3 days a week with picking up newspapers and cardboard and paper products. So then I added to the flyers, we'll do gutter cleaning and junk hauling and all this stuff, because now we had Mondays and Fridays where we were clear. So we filled up with other work, and that required more people. And so it grew. But then I met the girl that is now my wife and has been for almost 39 years. And I didn't want to be picking up old newspapers. I wanted this really cute girl to think I was cool. So I sold the company to one of the guys I was working with. And I took my money and bought cellular telephones and got set up as an agent for GT MobileNet. And before I knew it, we had 5 locations. So I had all these 25 or 26 salespeople and in multiple places and multiple leases, and I was 22, 23 years old. And none of this seemed like this is hard or I need a plan. It was just like I'm caught up in the momentum of the whole thing. And that all came to a screeching halt in one meeting when I was about 28. The GT MobileNet called all the agents in and they said, effective right now in this meeting, we're changing everything. We're removing your advertising, your co-op advertising. We're removing how you get paid. They just changed everything, and all the smart money shut their companies down. And naive little Aaron Young in his 20s thought, "Oh, I'm big, I'm successful. I have new cars. I'm in my second home that we've purchased. I'm kicking butt." I thought I was great. And I thought I could weather the storm. And I ended up in bankruptcy court with my wife sitting there pregnant, 9 months pregnant with our second child, hundreds and hundreds of $1,000s upside down. Our home was leveraged to the hilt. I'd used up all my personal credit. We used up all the money the business had. And now I'm sitting there going, what happened? So it's not all this perfect trajectory. It's like a roller coaster, man. But I mean, the way I got more sophisticated was somebody from church had observed me doing all these things. And he was CEO of some company. And I knew he had a new Suburban. I knew he had a pool in his backyard. I knew they'd built their home. And it wasn't even a fancy house. It was a split entry, 2,200 square foot house. But to me, I thought it was a big deal. And he took me to lunch one day and asked me if I would even consider having a job. And I was sitting there thinking, honestly, I was going, who would hire me? I don't have any education. I've never worked for anybody else. I've been running my own thing since I was a teenager. Like, I don't know that I'm up for working. Not that I want to, I don't know if I would qualify.
Right,
I just know how to make it up as I go. And that ended up being vice president of sales of a big multinational, which we took public on NASDAQ while I was one of the 3 vice presidents. And that was from 29 to 32. That was my big launch into enterprise level business and learning how to buy and sell companies and learning how to read financials and, becoming more sophisticated.
right. So going back where you just lost everything because you have, I mean, you're, 20, early 20s, mid 20s, and you've just got everything that anybody can want. And then all of a sudden you get your first dose really of reality about, all the work that you've done. And all of a sudden all of it can be gone in the split of, in just a matter of minutes.
Oh yeah.
Everything can
One
be gone.
meeting, it was done.
And then your whole world is shaken up. And so in the meantime, while you're building and you're doing all this great work, you're learning about business and entrepreneurship. Somebody else is watching you this whole time, seeing how well you're running your own companies and says, "Hey, do you want to come to work? Do you want a job now?" And was that a hard transition for you to go to a job?
Well, that's a great question. People have asked me about this before. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that. I think I was, so I had a wife and 2 children at this point and we were very, very much a traditional, conservative family where I was the breadwinner. She was with the children. She kept the home. I funded our life. And so I felt that weight on my shoulders very, very, significantly. And I took it seriously. It was my stewardship. And to my wife's credit, because we'd made an agreement, she come from a divorced family. So it was her and her sister and her mom. Her mom was young and was out having a social life. And my wife, who was the younger of the 2 girls, said, there was nobody there when I left for school in the morning. There was nobody there when I got home from school. My mom didn't really go to my functions. If I was in a play or something, she didn't really show up. She didn't really invite me into her social life. So my wife said, I was kind of alone a lot. And so when we were talking about getting married, she said, it's important to me that I'm home with our children, that I'm there when they go to school. I'm there when they come back. I'm there at those crossroads in their day. And I said, well, I didn't know the word entrepreneur there, but I said, I want to continue to be a business owner, and that can be really up and down. It could be crazy. And she said, I don't care if we sleep in a cardboard box, as long as I can be home with the kids.
Wow.
And I said, okay. So fast forward to this moment, I go home and say, Mike Bears offered me this job. What job? Well, vice president of sales. There's a salary, there's car allowance, there's benefits, there's all, and we had just crashed and burned, right? We'd just been in bankruptcy court. And I was like schlepping fax machines and just anything I could do to just pay the mortgage and pay the health insurance and everything else beyond it. We had turned our cars into the bank. And I had this like old beater Ford Taurus that had like 400,000 miles on it. My wife was driving an old Hyundai stick shift. She had to park on a hill. We couldn't afford to fix the starter. So she had to pop the clutch to start it. Can you imagine having two little kids in car seats? And that's, where am I going to park? There's a hill.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this was a pretty marginalized situation. And, we said a lot of times we might be broke, but we're not poor.
Mm. And that goes to show it's the mindset, right? The mindset.
We knew we would find a way out of the mess. And I think it's important to tell these stories to people, that it's not all just this, easy path of wealth. I'm a wealthy guy. I am. I'm in the top 1%. My life is great, but I tell you what, I've had to be willing to suffer through the downs to enjoy the ups. And even now, I've learned, how do I hedge against potential challenges that could come? So anyway, going back to that whole thing, to my wife's credit, she said, when I said about the job, she said, "Are you sure you want to take a job? Because you're an entrepreneur or you're a business guy, you'll figure out a new thing." And I said, "Well, I think we're broke right now. We need help. We need some more money." She goes, "Yeah, but you've got a couple things percolating." And she was being so great. And we were very active Mormons at that time. And I said, "Well, let's pray about it." So we went and we did. And I prayed also by myself. And I came back to her and I said, "I need to take the job." And she said, "You're absolutely sure you want to do this?" I said, "Yes, I'm going to accept the job." And she was like, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so glad." Because she was, I'd give her $20 and that was what she could use at the grocery store for the week.
Wow.
I mean, we were eating a lot of ramen,
Mm-hmm.
and having a great partner, sorry, I got a little tickle in my throat. Having a great partner is an unbelievably powerful lever in building something big. And they talk about that in Think and Grow Rich. They talk. I was interviewed one time on a big business podcast called Entrepreneur on Fire. I've been on there twice, and he asked me, "What's your most important business hack?" I said, "I plan a romantic date with my wife every week." And he goes, "Wait, how is that a business hack?" I said, "When things are good at home, I can do anything in business. When things are bad at home, I can't focus on anything else."
Right.
So the best thing I can do is keep my marriage and my family in good shape, because then I can go conquer the world.
And you just mentioned about, having the right partner and that incredible support, because going through what you went through the bankruptcy itself, been through that, understand how that works. It's mind blowing. And that in itself can literally tear people apart, because how are you going to survive after coming out of that? And you have this huge support system in your wife. At what point did you end up going over to Laughlin and Associates? Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, okay. So I was at the public company, and we did very well. And of course, as an officer, once we were on NASDAQ, I was getting options and shares and so on. And there was significant appreciation over the time. And so I was able to leave there. They kept me on for another year as a consultant to help them find a new VP of sales. So I continued with my same pay and everything without having to work there anymore. And I started liquidating shares and buying companies. And as I bought companies, sold some companies, and kind of developed some new things, eventually, I was competing with Laughlin, and when Mr. Laughlin died, their trust attorney called me and said, "Are you interested in buying the company?" So that I was 37 when I bought Laughlin, and most companies we've bought and sold. Laughlin is such a great place to meet all kinds of business owners because we have tens of thousands of clients. And I get to hear stories. I get to hear what's going on out there in the world. Um, it's been a tremendous kind of fertile breeding ground for opportunities by owning Laughlin and doing all we can to support our business owner clients, such that some of them come back to me and say, "Hey, can I tell you about something I'm working on?" And I get opportunities all the time, and I get to pick and choose what I like.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is your company has helped hundred
Hundreds of
thousand
thousands.
of entrepreneurs, and for somebody out there, I guess we can talk about this right now, but for somebody out there who's just like, I got this idea, but I don't even know what to do with it. I don't even know where to start with an idea. All I've got is this brainstorm, and that's it. How do they do? Where do they go from there?
If they're just trying to get started, this little book I put together called The Critical 20, and you can get it from Laughlin. You can write to Aaron Young at Laughlin USA, and we'll send you a PDF of the book, or if you want to pay postage, we'll send you a book. This is really, and this is written like this. Look at this. Great big words. Every chapter is like 3 pages. It's a simple little book, but it's really the 20 items from, is your idea even any good? Does anybody care about your idea? All the way through development to when is it time to replace yourself.
Hmm.
So that's a great book about concepts and giving some case studies. And I will tell you that a guy who is a friend of mine, we've sat on some boards together. He called me after Christmas earlier this year, and he said, "Hey, Aaron, I need to buy a half dozen of your books." I said, "Oh, the Unshackled book, the big book, the New York published book that came out this year or about a year ago?" He goes, "No, the little one with your face on the front." I said, "Now this guy, just for reference, is the founder of telemedicine.
Hmm.
He built his company Teladoc to $34 billion before he stepped out as the leader."
Wow.
He's calling me saying, "I need a half dozen of these because I had my copy sitting on my dining room or on my coffee table in the living room over the holidays, and people kept picking up going, 'Where can I buy one of these?' So I need you to sign a half dozen of them, send them to me because I've got people that want them." I mean, where did that come from?
Right?
Right? But still, I mean, and we're having similar. So if you're a little bit further along and you want to build a company and scale it, this book, Unshackled, is the formula I've been using for 40 years building companies.
Wow.
And it's
Wow.
and it's much more maturely written than what you would have gotten from me in the recycling or cellular phone days, because I've learned a lot over the years. But that book, we're doing a national book tour. That's, you saw me signing books the other day, and uh, so what does somebody do? You do what I did, which is you get as much, you learn as much as you can, and then you sift through that. You don't have to do everything you learn. Just get the information and then kind of go, okay, what part of this can distill down onto the project? And that's what I've tried to do in both of these books is distill down. And I taught the other day in front of you this concept of same rules apply. If you figure out a process, you can pretty much follow the process in any kind of a company in any industry. Most people fail because they might have a good opportunity in front of them, but they have no way of executing on it because they just don't know what to do. And so thankfully, I was able to cut my teeth on some simple things early, and then when I got to a bigger sandbox with the public company, I was not alone trying to figure it out. And then my career has put me in the position of knowing so many incredibly accomplished people both as my clients, as people I do speaking stuff with, boards I've sat on. So, I mean, I just told you about Teledoc. The forward to this book is written by the former president of Warner Brothers. And it just goes on and on. These are all guys that I know, men and women I know, and I've been able to sit with them, in their backyard or whatever. And we just talk about stuff, and you learn a lot. Now, most people listening to my voice right now on your podcast will never get that chance because their life won't lead them there. They'll meet people I'll never meet.
Mm-hmm.
My goal with writing this stuff was simply to go, I'm getting older. I'm 61. What can I put out there for $20 that might actually help some people not make all the mistakes I made?
And you really what you're doing is you're wanting to give back some of the knowledge that you've gained over the years to help other entrepreneurs. Because I think one of the first things that an entrepreneur or somebody that wants to start their own business is the fear of even taking a first step, the fear of even talking about their idea, because somebody out there might say, well, that's kind of a crazy idea. You shouldn't do that. A lot of times it's themselves that are telling them, no, that's just a crazy idea. Don't even think about that. What would you say to somebody like that?
Well, the people that tell you that you're crazy, and well, first of all, maybe your idea sucks. I don't know. But many people have a pretty good idea. The people that get these ideas, right? It's important to acknowledge they're seeing something. They're seeing something that others around them are not seeing. And entrepreneurs, people that can't stop doing it, right? They have like this infection called entrepreneurship, and they just can't help themselves. By the way, and most entrepreneurs don't do very well financially. Most of them really struggle. So I'm not saying there's something noble about being an entrepreneur. I'm saying that if your brain works that way, where you're noticing things in the matrix, that there's a glitch and I can fix the glitch, right? And you wonder, why hasn't somebody already done this? It seems so obvious. Well, because you didn't show up yet to see it, right? That's what's happened. So the people around you, the people closest to you, are the ones most likely to say, ooh, that sounds risky, or how much is it going to cost? Oh my gosh, you're going to mortgage your house? You're going to max out your credit card? What are you talking about? Well, they're doing it to protect you. They're doing it because they love you. They want you to be safe. So they're trying to keep you from something that scares the crud out of them, right? Mm-hmm. That would freak me out to be in that spot, right? But you're going, yeah, but don't you get it? That if we did this, that would solve a big problem, or millions of people would want it, or whatever. So I say to most people that want to dip their toe into or dive in head first into entrepreneurship, that's mostly what they do, is they just go, wow, let's go. So I just say, look, if you have a good idea, the market wants the idea, and you have enough money that you can continue to feed yourself while you're trying to get this off the ground, and if you have a plan to execute, so you don't waste a lot of time and money doing dumb things. If you do that, you have a reasonably good chance of succeeding. And I encourage people who see something missing in the world to explore, and that's really what the little blue book is about, is exploring, is there something here? And you don't have to commit to it day one. You should do due diligence. You should try to poke holes in it. And if you can't poke very many holes in something, then you go, do I want to do it?
Right.
Am I willing to fix this circumstance that I'm noticing? Or maybe I'm the wrong person, or maybe I need to, there's a really smart guy that I know who had no money in college. He was broke in college. So he made up a game that he could get, friends over and they could play this game. He couldn't take girls on dates. He had no money. So he wanted to play, they could play the game. And the game is called Pictionary. And Rob created that business or that game out of a lack of money.
Wow.
And when he saw that it was good and people loved it, instead of him going out and try to go into the toy manufacturing business, he partnered with another board game company, and they have had the license the whole time. Rob Angel's company, or his intellectual property, was licensed out. He makes millions of dollars a year for this thing he figured out in college, and was smart enough to, instead of trying to hold on to it, licensed it to somebody who could do something with it. And he's gotten rich and doesn't have to work. And he hasn't worked all of his life. He's raised his
Wow.
whole family and didn't have to work because he was millions a year from Pictionary.
What's interesting, and we're in, and I don't talk really don't get too much into politics on the show, but with the way the world is right now, there's a lot of adversity out there. A lot of people are scared right now. They're not certain about what is going to happen right
Yeah.
now, and there's a lot of adversity right now.
Yeah.
And I remember this that there's opportunity in adversity. What would you say to people right now that are looking at there? They're facing that right now. Well, here's another question. Are you seeing an uptick with what's going on in the world today, with more people wanting to do something on their own?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're seeing that the big corporate jobs are not a lifetime career anymore. They see that a lot of the things that have any influence with government, right? Whether you're in the government or you're a contractor of the government or whatever, um, things like government shutdowns can happen, and all of a sudden the money stops flowing, or that program falls out of vogue and they shut it down. Here's what I see. I see a growing number of people that want to um, be the captain of their own ship. And I see a growing number of people who want the government to take care of them, want to babysit them. What's happening is the middle class is shrinking because we don't have a ton of middle class jobs because we exported so many of them. And whether or not Trump is going to be successful with his goal of bringing manufacturing back to the United States, I don't know. And I don't know if he'll have enough time to keep the pressure on to do that, because odds are there'll be somebody else that'll come in a few years and they'll go, anything he did, we're going to do something different, right? I mean, unless another Republican comes in, but even then, our current president's pretty dynamic in the way he deals with everything, from what he posts on on social media to how he goes after projects. But I do think that there are more and more people who want and can see a path to starting some kind of a small, maybe a one-person business where they can make the same kind of money, hopefully develop it to where they can have more control over their time. That's a kind of a fallacy. Many people think, oh, I'll start my company and then there's a line in a movie called "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" And they're dreaming, what will we do when we get that bank heist money that's been hidden? They're going out, they're on their quest, right? You know the movie?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very familiar with. Yes.
And one of the guys, one of them wants to get his wife, kids back. One of them wants to get land. And the other one says, I'm going to open a restaurant and I'm going to be the maitre d'. And he said, free food for the rest of my life. Because in his mind, owning the business meant free food.
Mm.
Instead of owning the business, now I've got a responsibility for the rent, for the food, for the team, for the laundry, for all getting people to show up and eat. In his mind, it was just like, if I own the business, I'll eat free for the rest of my life. And it was such a moment of, I understand the dream. And do you realize that that's an insane dream? You just said something that disqualifies you from this. And you're so out of touch with reality. Well, so many business owners come and they think, if I do this, then I'm going to get all this immediately. And my experience is, and I'm a pretty footloose, fancy-free business owner, and I own a lot of companies. And what I will tell you is, when the economy shrinks, but I know it's going to come back. A few years ago, my business partner, Lee Morgan, and I, we both, in the '08 crash, and by the time it caught up to us was 2010. And Lee and I both took 75% pay cuts and ended up having to both short sell our homes because we weren't making enough money to pay our mortgages anymore. and we both moved into rental houses, but we didn't fire one of the employees. We had 35, 38 employees at the time. We didn't fire anybody because we knew when the economy starts to come back, I'm going to need the team. So it was better to feed them while we went and sold these. I'd built this beautiful 7,000 square foot home when everything was going great. And we had to short, and somebody said to me, how does it feel to have to sell your dream home? And my answer was, oh, I have lots of dreams. It's not just this one thing. And do you know, the economy came back, and by 2012, we were making more money than we were making when we took the pay cut. So it was like, you have a stewardship, and when you steward something to success, you can have the benefit of that. But before it's really successful, you need to take care of all of your resources, your financial, your technical, your human resources. They get paid first, you get paid last, right? But if it's doing well, you get paid the most.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's doing poorly, you get paid the least.
Well, and it says a lot about you when you were sitting there and you're having to take the pay cut, 75% pay cut. The one thing you didn't want to do was you didn't want to let somebody go. And I think that says a lot about the character of the person that you are, because a lot of people they would go, well, guess what? You're going to, sorry, we're going to have to let you go. But you did the opposite thing. And that was take the pay cut so somebody could have a job because you had the forethought to think that it's going to turn around. It's going to get better. I need to hang on to this employee because that employee is going to also benefit from it. Just got to hang in there a little bit longer.
Yeah. If you have a flock of geese that lay golden eggs, right? And all of a sudden something happens and you're hungry. If you eat the goose, you're going to lose whatever production you could have had from that goose, right? Instead, what you do is go, I will drop weight. I will go without because I need the flock to be healthy, right? Because I knew to replace my team would be a Herculean effort. These were people that knew what to do, were great at doing it. What we do is stuff that is always going to be there. Just it had really shrunken while money went tightened up. But it came back and it came back bigger. And we just continue to get bigger, right? COVID, we got bigger during COVID. A lot of people complain about COVID. We grew during COVID because all of a sudden people were sitting at home and they had their job with, Apple or whatever, and they're doing stuff online, answering customer service questions or something, but they had a lot more time. So they said, oh, I'm going to start my little Etsy business. I'm going to start writing business plans for people. I'm going to start doing marketing for people. And our numbers went up. And so I think times of challenge is when the biggest wealth is created. Mm-hmm. When everybody out, the other day, there was a big crash in the crypto markets, the biggest sell-off of the whole crypto market that had ever happened. And there was, I don't remember if it was trillions or many, many hundreds of billions, but it was a big loss. And everybody goes, look at all the money that was lost. And I thought, look at who got to buy at fire sale prices. Because for every crypto token that got sold, somebody bought it. And they're going from, a $3 price down to $1.25. Are you freaking kidding me? And now it's back up at $2.65. All right, for the cryptos that I'm most interested in. I thought hundreds of millions of dollars were just transferred.
Right.
And people that were prepared versus people that were unprepared and scared.
Right. So, right. And it goes goes back to what I was talking about the opportunity and adversity, right? There's some people see it as, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing. And other people are going, oh, this is fantastic. It's all in how your mindset is and how you see everything.
In the Great Depression, there were two big cereal companies, Post and Kellogg's. And Post was bigger. And during the Depression, Post decided to conserve cash, kind of hunker down, keep the machine moving, but just preserve. Kellogg's doubled down on marketing and doubled down on creating new products. And they came out of the Depression wildly bigger than Post. And when you think of breakfast cereal, how much do you think of Post versus Kellogg?
Hmm.
Post is still out
Yeah.
there, Raisin Bran or whatever, but Kellogg is dramatically bigger. And it all came out of how they chose to deal with this moment of financial turmoil.
You covered so much in our time here, and you have been through a lot. You've seen the adversity in your early 20s. You went through the bankruptcy. You have a strong support system in your wife. And, maybe somebody out there, you've talked about, you've gone through your ups, you've gone through your downs, but the biggest down that you have yet to face is coming up. And I kind of wanted to touch on that because think it's important for the audience to understand that even when things are going so great, everything is going good, something can come up from behind that you don't even know about that can literally almost take you down. And we're talking about, of course, this indictment that you got. Can you touch on that? How
Now,
did
just
you?
clarify, this is 2002 this
Right.
started. Okay,
Okay.
it's long, it's 20 years in the rearview mirror.
Right.
Okay. No,
Right.
go ahead. Yeah, ask your question.
Yeah. Anyway, so the point being is that, you saw a lot of adversity. You saw something coming up from behind. And yeah, it was a long time ago, but it was still something you had to overcome to
Oh
get
yeah.
to where you are today.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us? How did you manage that? How that was just the fact of being about $2 million in legal fees. I couldn't even imagine having that much money in legal fees alone trying to survive.
Yeah, and we finally ran out of money. So I had written a business plan for somebody right after I left that public company. I'd written a business plan for somebody um, that he was the founder of that company, but he had not been there while I was there. He was out. But he was the founder and he was revered. And when I left, they said, you can count on that he's going to call you. And so, sure enough, the next day I got invited to lunch by his assistant, and we went to lunch. And he said, he told me this whole story of, and it was all true, about how he got a banking and a trust company license in the Caribbean. He was living half the year in the Caribbean, all the cold months. Warm months, he was up in the Northwest, and then cold, he was in the Caribbean at his home. And he'd proven up with the FBI and Interpol. He had a correspondent bank. He'd put up millions of dollars with bond with the country. And he said, would you write a business plan for me to open and create my trust company and bank, which was totally legal, nothing weird about it. If you think of Swiss banking or Hong Kong banking or Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, the Channel Islands, Isle of Man, Bahamas, Caribbean, Cayman, those are all banking jurisdictions. Most of them were British Commonwealth jurisdictions that England encouraged them to do privacy banking so that England didn't have to keep supplementing them financially. So England said, we'll protect you and you can do that. And off you go. So anyway, I built the business plan. He offered, it was, instead of it just being about his company, it was develop leads in the United States and then only with law firms. And then the leads can go to the bank if the law firm thinks this client is appropriate to go to the trust company and the bank. So he funded it. I built that company up along with somebody who was on his team, who is now my business partner. And we built that up. We did that for about 2.5 years. Then we decided we no longer wanted to do the offshore stuff. Even though we weren't doing offshore, we were involved because we were working with the law firms and identifying the law firm's customers they could hand off. We were just the middle guy. We were like the marketing side. But we stopped in January 1st, 2000. We were done. We'd separated. 3 years later, the FBI and the Criminal Enforcement Division of the IRS did a synchronized raid on, I think, 6 locations around the country, including my office in downtown Portland, which was half of the 26th floor of the U.S. Bank Tower. And they raided this and a bunch of other places, including the guy's home. And I got made aware of this. I was talking to the special agent in charge. I said, am I involved in this or my companies? He said, nope, nothing. You're not a part of this. But we figured you might have stuff about him because you worked with him for a few years. So anyway, 4 months later, I got indicted on conspiracy. And I thought, I never conspired to do anything. And they said, no, in conspiracy, you don't have to know about the crime. You just have to have materially assisted. And because we were working with the law firms and packaging stuff up, they said, we know you don't know about anybody doing anything wrong against the IRS. There was no fraud. There was nobody lost money. There was nothing. Just the IRS said they weren't getting all their money. So I thought, well, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. How can I possibly be in trouble for that? So we got lawyers and we went to war. And 3.5 years later, we finally were like, well, or about 3 years later, we said, okay, we should have believed what they told us at the beginning, which is the IRS has a 99.3% conviction rate. So you're not going to win. And you're in the Ninth Circuit, so you cannot get separated from the other 40 some people that are in the case for just our little, whatever.
Right.
They said there's no argument against you without the rest of it. Right. So anyway, that's a long story. There's a 2-hour podcast about it. If anybody wants to find out about crime, it's called Inside True Crime. You can go listen to all he wanted was the battle. Right. And so you get 2 hours on that. But I'll just tell you, it finally became clear that we had to mitigate our risk. So we came up with a strategy, my partner and I, not the lawyers. The lawyers were just settle. They wanted us to take a 7-year plea agreement. I was like, oh, hell no, I'm not doing that. And long story short, I did plead guilty to something. My business partner did plead guilty to something. The lawyers said they'll never accept those. They're too skinny. There's no heft to that. And I just said, well, that's all I've got. And I can comfortably say, yep, I gave that guy a phone number. 2 years later, he inappropriately deducted something on his taxes because he bought something from that company I gave him the phone number for. And the judge was like, wait, you want to take responsibility for that? And I'm like, yep. Because I knew that the government was just going to keep coming after us forever. So I was like, yep, I'll take my lumps right now. And thankfully the judge, I'm really shortening the story, but the judge, we agreed to 36 months. The judge cut it in half, and he cut by 90% almost our probation time. And no, not 90, it'd be 80%, from 5 years to 1 year.
Right.
And then off we went, both of us, to 2 different facilities for 14 months and a week. And then we had our halfway house in Good Time. And, we had the founder of WebMD and the CFO of Intel. So my best friend and my partner's next door neighbor both offered to look after the company while we were gone for no pay. They would just do that as a favor. And then we had our vice presidents that were all great. And my partner said, I would like your wife to be in charge while we're gone. And I said, she's a stay-at-home mom. She's a homemaker. He goes, yeah, but she's smart. She's tough. And she can talk to you in the visiting room, and I think that would be the best thing. And she did a phenomenal job. But she asked me, and this goes back to this book. Mm-hmm. She said to me at the time, she goes, well, I'll do it, but how will I know what to do? And I said, you don't need to know how the whole company runs because it's all organized. It all works already. So what you need to do is be able to listen to ideas, or you need to be able to sign big checks, and you need to be able to kind of sniff out if somebody's trying to pull one over on you, and take advantage of your inexperience, which you'll be able to do beautifully. But the team is great, and the team will operate. And so that year I was in prison, I still took home $974,000.
Wow.
Right? That was still, even though I was gone, like being on my mission for the church and the recycling business running, the company, in this case, much, much bigger, ran, and I still took home almost $1 million that year. Or I could say my wife did, but the system worked. And the good news is, because my marriage stayed together, my partnership stayed together, My employees didn't leave. My customers didn't leave. The legal and accounting firms we worked with didn't leave. And the first person to invite me to come speak was Brian Tracy. And he's
Wow.
like, you got to get back on the horse, Aaron. Come on. And I said, but I don't want to hurt your brand. He goes, no, no. You have now moved to a new echelon of people that can go through a really terrible circumstance and your ship stayed together. That means you're building something good. You're ready for a whole new echelon of business connections, which is what's happened.
The fact is that you really had a strong system set up already in place, and the fact and huge credit, obviously, and I heard you talk about this. You mentioned it here. I heard you talk about it in person. Huge credit goes to your wife. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
the strength and the fortitude to be able to endure all
Yes,
of this
and the
chaos,
intelligence and the
right?
intelligence and the competency. I when I met her, she had just turned 19 and I had just turned 22. And I met her and I thought, I've dated a lot of girls and I've never met anybody like her. She's totally different. And I noticed over our life, everything she gets involved with, she rises to the top, just organically. And she started she calls herself an executive coach. It's a kind of a life coach for high performing people. And she's got an amazing book of business with her clients. I mean, really a lot of famous people and a lot of people who've built big, big, big companies. And she, when she said she wanted to become a coach, um, she goes, I don't even really know what that means, but I want to learn about it and do that. And again, now she's running this very successful coaching business and has all these people that are her clients and that work for her and buy her programs and invite her to speak, and back then she was a 33-year-old stay-at-home mom.
Mm.
No, that's wrong. That's wrong. She would have been 36. Is that right?
Yeah, don't get the age
36.
thing wrong.
36. No, but that when we asked her to step in.
Right.
Amazing, huh?
It is
Amazing.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm always gonna say that yes, the system existed. Yes, I had great people. Yes, we built something strong, but you still need somebody at the wheel.
Mhm.
And I'll always be grateful, and I'm incredibly honored to be married to her. And like I said, we're coming up on our 39th anniversary, and we have 4 kids and 10 grandkids, and our life is just fabulous. Um, but we've had to renegotiate our marriage and renegotiate our contracts, and you have to do that with your business partnerships and with your vendors and with you're never going to get into stasis. You're never going to just be treading water. You're growing or you're shrinking. That's it. And if you're going to grow, you have to renegotiate and you have to surround yourself with different people sometimes, and you have to continue to evolve. And uh, I'll just tell you, if anybody ever saw the Freddie Mercury Queen, biopic,
Mhm.
it was kind of fun. Remember, he was working at the airport moving luggage, and the band was coming through, and he started talking to them, the band guys, and got to go and audition for them to sing. And I bet you couldn't even tell me anybody but Freddie Mercury who was in Queen. Could
Right.
you name any of the other members besides Freddie Mercury?
No.
The band
Now I'm not that.
originally was Dawn, but it became Tony Orlando and Dawn. And I watched a concert last night, Brandy Carlisle, but she went and tried to get these 2 twins who were already cutting little EPs, and she wanted to be a singer with these guys busking up in the what's the market in Seattle, Pike Street Market, and just playing out there for tips, the money to throw money in the hat. And now it's Brandy Carlisle, and they're her backup, and she's the Grammy Award winner. You have to
Uh-huh.
evolve. You have to evolve. And if you can do that, if you have the guts to be able to let yourself rise up, maybe have to replace people around you sometimes, that's how you grow. And as soon as you think you can't do it, well, you'll either be stuck or you'll shrink.
Right.
So I don't know. You're right. I've covered a lot of stuff very superficially here. I hope it was useful to somebody
Uh,
listening.
It's definitely useful. You've been through a lot. You learned a lot as a teenager, running your own businesses, like I said, the bankruptcy, the going to prison. If you were to encapsulate all that, what is
The loss
something
of my
that
large intestine, the heart
right?
or the heart bypass,
Yeah.
issues with kids, illnesses, I mean, yes, I've had a full life.
Hmm.
Um, some people will let medical challenges, be their excuse for failure. Some people will let relationship challenges be their reason. Some people will say, I need 2 weeks off because my cat died. And I'm not saying that they aren't truly suffering. I'm saying you're making a decision of where to put your energy and emotion. And
Hmm.
I don't fault anybody for it. I will say a certain kind of person will put focus on their immediate um, security and with an eye toward eventual abundance. Many people will just say, how can I be secure? Or how can I get more from the government? Or they should let me have more paid time off or whatever. And as long as you want to be um, at the mercy of somebody else, that's okay. And you know what? Almost everybody goes through life like that. And every now and again, they might have to find a new job, but they're okay. And when they're done at 5, they're all the way done.
Hmm.
They're done. Whereas I don't work very hard, but I never stop thinking about all the projects. And that could be my kids, my grandkids, a construction thing I'm doing for fun, my horses, my companies, the boards I sit on, the people I coach, the programs that I put out, the books I write. But my brain is always spinning on what can we do for 2026? What can we do for 2027? How many people can get a little bit of a nudge up on the ladder of their success journey because there's a book or because there's a podcast like this. That's where I put all my energy anymore.
Well, I tell you what, this has been tremendously informative. How can our listeners get in contact with you, find out more about the book? And I know, and I have watched, by the way, I did watch the whole 2 hours, the whole 2 hour podcast. I did watch it, which is, it's very informative. So if you want to, we'll try to make sure that there's a link in it, just because I think it's really important for people to really get a full understanding. We just skimmed the very top
It's
of
a very
everything that's
scary
happened.
thing.
Yeah.
And we're in a moment right now, and I'm not being political here. We're in a moment that I think many of us don't recognize what's going on in Washington D.C. And some people hate it, and some people love it. And I'm kind of in the middle, going, I wonder what's going on here. How do I adjust to what I'm watching going on with this incredibly dynamic guy named President Donald Trump? And so, whether you love him or hate him, there is a tremendous amount of shifting of the ground under our feet right now. And whether you like it or hate it, we have an opportunity right now to say, while there is this mental and emotional turmoil, people are holding on to money. There's just, the prices are up on certain things, down on certain things. Some people think this is the greatest moment to be alive. Some people think that the country's crashing. But in that turmoil, there's a way to pop up and be a voice that people listen to, and you can attract them to you and to your message, and find a way. I notice people that are selling dehydrated food are growing like crazy right now. People that are selling books about being prepared and, how to survive or whatever, those things are doing well right now. But so are companies that help rank and file kind of grassroots people start making some extra money.
Mhm.
Those things are doing well right now. And so there's a moment in the turmoil to find a big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And that pot of gold is never from cheating people. It's always from, if you serve enough people, you will get benefit from that. But you have to do a good job. And you have to keep doing a good job. And that gold will just keep filling up that big pot of gold. It'll just keep pouring in as long as you always make it about the customer, not about yourself.
Well, man, I was gonna ask you if you had any final words, but man, that last part was it. I mean, that was a mic drop on that. But I will give you one more chance. Anything else that you would like the audience to know about you, about the business, about starting a business? Last word yours.
We can give them links, and they can, if they choose to, if they like me enough, they can click on a link. You asked that question and something just popped into my mind, which is a little random, but I'm going to just go with it. There's a Jimmy Buffett song called Changes in Latitudes, Changes in Attitudes. And I think it's the second verse. He says, yesterday's over my shoulder, so I can't look back for too long. There's just too much to see waiting in front of me. And I know that I just can't go wrong with these changes. But the point is, if we spend our time looking back at what the good old days, you're going to get a cramp in your neck. But if you go, the future is so exciting, I'm going to look for, instead of going, that sucked, or that person did that, or it was hard, or I stubbed my toe. Instead you go, wow, look what's out there in the world. What is possible for me, for my dreams? And how big am I willing to dream? And how much am I willing to risk to get my dream? And that's going to determine your future every single time.
Well, Aaron, thank you very much for spending time with us. It's been very informative. We'll make sure all the links to contact you and the book and all that are included. Again, thank you for joining us. And if you're out there and if you find something in this podcast that strikes you, or maybe there's somebody that that's going through a lot, is an entrepreneur, has a business idea, and they're not sure where to turn, be sure to pass this information along about the podcast to them so they can learn from it as well. I'm your host, Deston Rogers. Join us again next time for another edition of Eagle Freedom Presents.
To learn more about our mission and become a part of #Rio Movement, visit eaglefreedompresents.com. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs a beacon of hope. If you know someone who has an amazing story of overcoming, send us an email to eaglefreedompresents@gmail.com. And remember our mantra, rise, inspire, overcome. Podcast distribution for Eagle Freedom Presents provided by Podetize. Visit podetize.com for all your podcast needs.